my chips with the dip. That's all I know. I don't want my chips plain. I want my chips with the dip. So bring them dips. You see what my hat says? Not finals, not Eastern Conference, not nice try, or see you next year. Champions. Let's go. Talk.
That's who did I steal from? Price tags on making the world feel some. They don't have enough to satisfy a real one.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
Shoot trying to miss. Like every shot.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
Try to make it, so I was gonna act surprised.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
Love the game of basketball. I mean, it's just more question you have to ask me in order for me to tell you about.
Logical Raptors Fanatic.
I just can't give you a whole spiel. I don't even know where you're sitting at.
Salute, real ones. Project Truth always. Mike G back here with Logical Raptors Fanatic, and today we're continuing our Raptors 2022-2023 end of season series with Fred VanVleet, and he has a lot to say about the team, and he's sort of like a Nick whisperer on a deeper level. Like, we've heard some of the symptoms, like Pirtle said, consistency. We have to try to find that consistency to the next level. And then, obviously, Chris Boucher last week talked about the Raptors needing a culture change and some of the issues with different schemes and minutes going up and down, and some of the younger guys finding consistency. So we're going to go into things a little bit deeper on a more higher level this week and not talk so much about Fred VanVleet's future role. There will be a little snippet at the end, but we're going to do a lot of main team issue talking points today. So we're going to start off with how Fred VanVleet saw the season going this year and what were the expectations coming in.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. I think, it was new. You know, it was new the first time around. I think there was no expectations or low expectations. I think we just kind of went with the flow. I think teams also had a year to prepare for us and how we play. I think that we started slow, way too slow, and once we picked it up, we were already, 4, 5, 6 games under 500. I think that, starting in January, the team started to take a bit of a shift in the right direction. Adding Jakob changed the complexion a lot. So it was really almost 3 different stages of the season, which was early on, not very good, and we lost our fabric of the winning, the magic that comes with just winning and just figuring it out, what we've done so well around here so many years. We lost that for a couple weeks, fought to get it back, and ultimately you put yourself in a position to have a chance to get into the playoffs, and I don't think there's any good way to lose a playing game, and certainly, the way we did it was a head scratcher. So, it's a tough season.
So there we heard Fred VanVleet's summary of the season. I think there's a through line between what Pirtle said, Siakam said, and Masai said about the season being almost like a couple different seasons in the same season. And half of it was starting to work. When we got Pirtle, it's starting to work. Like Chris said, we got to a place where we were trying to get over the hump, but we didn't actually get over the hump. And what that entailed and what the beginning issues were, Fred VanVleet's going to go into a little bit deeper with sort of the inner workings of what broke down throughout the season from Nick's planning sort of standpoint, and the eventual turnoff of the team was from the different schemes every single game and every single, you even heard what Nick said. He had to keep switching things. Like, one thing would be solved and another thing would pop up. And there was a lot of, is Nick switching the playbook again? It's like, how do these players keep track, especially the younger ones? Like, obviously Fred VanVleet's very knowledgeable and was able to keep up, but he could see that the other guys were kind of falling behind in their understanding what Nick was doing from a day-to-day operations, and the coaching staff maybe wasn't too clued in on what was going on, and they weren't able to prepare the players. And I think when players get prepared, that's when they feel that confidence, that underdog, like, I can do it. They feel like they're prepared. They feel like they have what it takes to get things done. And slowly that erodes away at confidence and whatnot. And I think Nick just doesn't really cue in on that. We're going to hear some stuff later on, but let's hear Fred VanVleet's opinion on the chemistry issues and effort this year, and we're going to go into that now.
I wouldn't use chemistry, Doug, just because I'm really not trying to be a part of any scandalous headlines here. But I would say that I would say that we tried a lot of different things, right? So we tried a lot of different things this year, offensively, defensively. We tried, focusing on different guys and featuring different guys. We tried to play a different way. We tried a lot of things, and we were experimenting a lot. And sometimes it goes good, and sometimes it doesn't work. And I think that a lot of things that we explored this year didn't bear a lot of fruit, so to speak, in the win column. But I think there was a ton of valuable experience that we all have to be able to take out of these situations and learn from.
So there, Fred's explaining the different scenarios and whatnot, but I just want to kick in the part where he says it was still valuable growth-wise, and he's meaning Scotty and the younger guys. Seeing all these different positions and getting a little bit of Bird was still beneficial, even though it didn't result in wins. So let's continue on.
No, I just think that when you win, everything works, and when you lose, then it was a bad idea. It was a terrible idea, and the players, stink, and now everybody's questioning coach, and that's how it goes, right? When you win, you're perfect, and everybody's a genius. And when you lose more than everybody thinks you should, then you have to find somebody to blame, and that everything went wrong, and what is wrong with this team, and I just can't understand it. And that's the way it goes, and which is why you gotta want to be a winner.
So I think Fred VanVleet puts his thumb on the exact issue of the different turnoff of the team towards the coach. And I think it was just he kept changing things, and it seemed like it wasn't doing anything. They were still losing because a lot of different things, like I think the system need to get simplified. Like Fred's going to go on later about how we rebuild the offense and defense from a coaching standpoint and not trying to osmosis the championship format and what they ran into now and create our own system and new identity. And I think there's a real great synergy with trying a new process, but I think we do have to look at the ultimate sum of Nick's failing and why he couldn't get a consistent effort this season.
No, I've never had that before. I think that it's just something that you do. It's not really even something that's spoken about. There's the old rule is that you don't have to coach, energy and effort, right? You just got to bring that. So whatever the reason is, trust me, if I had the answer, we would have fixed it a long time ago. But it was just one of those things sometimes where just some nights we didn't have it. So, again, where we finished 41. So I don't know where you guys had us, on a win column before the season. I certainly had it higher than 41, but I think everybody in this room can count, probably up to 10 games that we certainly should have won and could have won. So, you take half of that, right? And I think 48 probably got you in the top 6 maybe this year, somewhere in there, which we ended up last season. So the margin is very small, and I think we usually end up on the other side of that line, but this year we're probably just right under where we needed to be.
There's the issue, because Nick coaches from a place where he assumes the effort and buy into what he's saying is going to happen. He doesn't really register what's going on with the team and how many schemes and how many different things he's trying to implement affect the overall ability of the team to read and get stable, consistent roles built out of it. Like, he was going too far off the one end where he was adjusting way too much throughout the season, and not really seeing how the players were starting to turn off to all the changes. And that's why you could see at the end of the season he stopped kind of like barking things out. But Fred VanVleet's going to go into kind of like Nick's system does work in certain ways, but I think Fred VanVleet's role as leader should have been to let Nick know that this was starting to happen. And I think that was the mixed feelings about letting Nick go, because I think he felt partially responsible for being stuck in the middle and trying to make everyone happy. He says that later, and I think it's because he knew what the problem from the players was, and he knew what the coach needed to do but wasn't doing. So I think there's a lot of stuff that gets lost in translation sometimes, and it's up to the leader to make sure everything kind of sticks what needs to stick in order to win. And I think there was just too much for Fred VanVleet to kind of capture and safety net, and a lot of things were falling through, and that's a lot on Nick, I think. And we're going to hear some more about why Fred VanVleet supported Nick throughout the whole time.
I think so. Again, I really don't know how you gauge that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think so, honestly. I'm not trying to be a jerk. I really think so. I think also, like I said to Doug, like, how do you gauge that? Because if you're only going off the results, then you would say no, right? Because it's not working or whatever the case may be. But, I mean, he came in this year, he was coaching his butt off from day one. Whatever, you know, the situation was and the results were, they were. We all got to live with that. So I know when I don't play well, we lose. I don't sleep. I didn't sleep last night. I'm sure he didn't sleep last night. Like, we're all in this together. And, and until that changes, I'm always going to have everybody's backs that's in that locker room with us.
So I think he summed up why he sticked with Nick. It was because the loyalty to the Raptors and what we're doing here. He's committed to us. He's committed to us in so many ways and facets. But Nick is not the conduit to whether Fred VanVleet can stay here or not. Let's hear what he has to say about what is needed going forward.
I think we just got to find another identity. You know what I mean? Whatever that is. And I think that the chaos and the freedom, it worked when it worked. And I think that going forward, just pick what we're going to do. Like, it's not really that complicated. You know what I mean? We lock into how things are going to flow offensively. Obviously we got a ton of talent for the breakdown situations. Defensively, I do like the system that we have in place. It needs to be executed at a higher clip. We need more reps and we need sharper. But I think for us, the devil's going to be in the details. And I think that, we have to rep that and build that. Like, we can't try to do it by osmosis and like try to carry over a championship from 4 years ago and expect to add that to a group that we have now. Like, we got to build that every single day, starting as soon as we get back in the gym this summer. Like, you got to start building every single detail offensively and defensively. And then when you get down to a situation where you need to win a game, like, those things show. And I think that's as a group, for the players, that's my focus, is like getting our habits back right and our details back right. And I think everything else will fall in place accordingly after that.
So that's where Fred VanVleet's talking about the freedom that Nick gave, but also needing a structure. Let's pick a direction and go with it for a while so guys can get into a groove. And obviously, Nick Nurse wasn't getting that done. And there was just so much like wanting guys to step up in certain moments, and when no one would step up, it's like Fred VanVleet's left there holding the bag and having to do all these crazy things that he shouldn't be doing, because he's not that type of player. He's not like the star player. He's better as a complementary player towards your better stars and can help them play better, right? So being focused and it falling back on Fred VanVleet wasn't really a sound strategy when we're looking to really build this offense and defense out. It has to be a coach that's more familiar with forwards and passing forwards in that type of style. So Sergio Scariola and Jordi Fernandez is two coaches we've heard, which both have experience with passing big men, Gasol and Jokic. So I think utilizing Scotty and Pascal more would be the type of system we need to surround this team as, and building it from the ground up offensively and defensively. And I think Fred sounds very on board with that kind of, but let's hear what he has to say about the selfishness and what was going on with the ISO play heavy during that time.
Yeah, but I also think that we are an offense that takes what we can get at times too. And so with the roster, I know for the majority of the time, without a five, that almost forces the defense to switch 1 through 5, right? And so there's a lot of ways you can get better at playing against switches, but sometimes you just got to beat your guy. And if you beat your guy enough to win, then it's great offense. And if you don't, then it's not, right? So the basketball convo is so intricate and, it's so detailed that it's hard to say one way or another. I think that the ball movement and just getting everybody involved, I think it developed and got better throughout the season. But I don't know if we make a couple more buckets last night in ISO situations. I don't have to answer that question today. You know what I mean? And that's just the way that it goes sometimes. So, yes, I think that it can work. I think that the offense needs some work for sure. The defense needs work. Like, we all need work. We need to get better individually. We need to get better as a group. We just need to get better.
So there, Fred VanVleet is talking about philosophy of offensive possessions where there's ISO play and then there's sharing the ball. And clearly he thinks that we just weren't ready for certain players and certain timings of certain ISO decisions that Nick was kind of hoping the players were going to figure out, where moving the ball was more better like style of play, and that's the style that Masai wanted and was hoping that was going to happen when he put this roster together this year. And I think that's where Masai and Nick kind of weren't on the same page in a sense of style of play, and I think that created a lot of like bad energy in a sense between their relationship, and I think that created stress on obviously Nick and Masai himself, and we saw them both stressed out from the losing and whatnot, and the plan not going according to plan in a sense. But after getting Pirtle, he wanted a reset of different things and how this team was going to function, and we saw some of it. But I think Nick's experience with the certain type of players we have now was just very limited because he's a very guard-oriented player. He was great with the three guard lineups and stuff, but now with the 4 forward lineup, he's not as able to really get in the mind of the forward and really help him explain out his role. And I think he does that a lot better with the point guard because he actually played point guard himself. So I think there's just a lot of what Nick isn't fitting the current team, more or less than it being like there's a rotten apple and everything. It was just there was dysfunction in messaging. And I think things kind of fell through the cracks and weren't being addressed on time by Nick. And I think that's just ultimately just his inability to coach this roster that we have now and being hired to coach the championship roster, and his system fit that roster, right? So we're going to have to go back and try to rebuild this up a little bit more. And I think a coach with some fresh ideas can really get the guys buy-in back in and maybe buy into that underdog feel of like we're starting from new and we have to reprove ourselves and not osmosis off the championship as much. So we're going to continue on with what Fred has learned this season from being in that leader position and what he can take going forward.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I learned, that was your first question, right? I think the biggest thing I learned this year is just that I just got to be myself. And, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with the position that I'm in. And so you explore different avenues and you try to find different ways to connect, whether it's connecting to guys or whether it's finding different results on the court. So I tried a lot of different things, like I said. But I think just got to be myself and let everything, fall where it is instead of trying to, be perfect and please everybody all the time. I'm always going to lead by example. I'm always going to play as hard as I can. I'm going to try to guard my guy as best I can. I'm going to try to play the right way. I think that goes without saying, but I develop more, relationships, obviously, as you spend more time with guys. So, I think I don't know if anybody has been characterized as being a great leader on a losing team or a bad team. I haven't really focused on that part. I always look at the winners, right? And we got to get back on that side of things, and I think everything else will take care of itself.
So there, Fred VanVleet goes into his foundation for continuing with the team and how it's been in a sense of him growing throughout this year. He hasn't had too many years of being like the vocal leader of an NBA team, and he's still trying to develop that aspect too. So he does know where some of his faults were, trying to please everyone by not telling Nick that, hey man, your stuff's not good, bro, and like kind of let him know, like G-check him as like a close person to him. But there was a lot of talk about him being point guard and Scotty's issue with needing to be point guard. Let's hear Fred VanVleet's own words on whether Scotty can be point guard with him.
Yeah, I would love to play with another point guard. I would love it. You know what I mean? It worked well when me and Kyle did it. Not that, that anywhere the same player, same type of player. But again, we explored a lot of that this year. There was a lot of times where he was the primary ball handler. It kind of went back and forth. Again, I think I try to share with him as much as I can in my experiences. So one thing that I saw him take a lot of growth in this year was like the value of a possession. His turnovers went way down, organizing, manipulating ahead of the time. He's such a freak that he can just make a play in the moment naturally, but there's a lot of ways where you can set that up way ahead of time. You know what I mean? So he took a lot of steps in the right direction this year. I don't know. That's something that we have to figure out as a group, right? It's like is everybody's role and what is it going to be? And it sounds silly to say that, you know what I mean? But a lot of like this regiment that we need, is kind of that will help things, if we knew everything that was going to come,
The longer bit where Fred VanVleet goes on about how Scotty can be a really great player and it's up to him how great he is, but he's talking about organizing the defense, and that's what Scotty was talking about. So it sounds like they're on the same page. And it's interesting because that's a thought that's come up on this channel before, where I've said Scotty can do all these unbelievable things, but it's almost like his teammates aren't ready for them at times. And Fred VanVleet's also noticed that and has actually voiced that to Scotty and has tried to actually help him plan some of those freak moves ahead of time and have the team on the same page when he does a lot of the spectacular stuff he does. And that stuff's going to grow over time. He also mentions how Scotty picks up all these new things every day, just randomly tries something and then it's now works and stuff. So there's a lot of excitement around Scotty's development. And I think Fred VanVleet's really just trying to assist in that process. He knows what Lowry did for him and what Lowry did for Pascal and every other player, and he understands that role. He needs to be there to really assist these guys to take the next level as players. And if Scotty really wants to become point guard, I think commanding the troops and organizing in a way where he understands what he's going to do and they understand that what he's going to do in those freak crazy moments where he goes aggressive and just slams it on people and stuff like that and everyone's on the same page, And I think a coach that focuses and more plans for those instances where he can design a play where Scotty is in those type of actions can really improve some of the stuff that Fred VanVleet was saying where they were both on ball this year. So there's room for Fred VanVleet and Scotty to continue. It's just if the numbers are right this summer. I'm not going to go into it now, but we'll leave that for the summer extension series. And housekeeping. So this one got a little bit long, so I'm going to do this quick. I just want to always salute out the real ones for the likes, the comments, the subs, the feedback. All that stuff is great. And always, Lex and Raptors Freak Nation, 9:30 a.m. Eastern, every day. This guy is really dissecting a lot of the different stuff surrounding the Raptors and really focusing on the Raptors and really just celebrating the Raptors as a team and a franchise we have here in Canada. And I just want to salute out, obviously, Lex always, and I'm going to leave it off there. Salute the real ones. Project Truth always. Logical Raptors. Fanatic out. Mike G. Mike G.
Oh man, I love my team. Man, I love my team. I would die for them.
Not just cause I want to, cause I got to. Put the squad on your back, did the impossible. It's only logical, it's fitted from the heart.
Problems hit the gym, they all work.